Some gifts are meant to bring joy. Some gifts are meant to celebrate love. A mother-in-law commissioned a family illustration. It was supposed to be a sweet Christmas surprise. At first, everything seemed normal. But then, small requests started coming in. Adjustments here, changes there. Subtle, but unsettling. And one request crossed a line no artist could accept. This is the story of a gift that became something entirely different. The artist had been working professionally for over 5 years, creating personalized wedding and family illustrations. She had handled countless commissions and seen her fair share of unusual requests, but nothing could have prepared her for this one. A few weeks before Christmas, a mother-in-law reached out with a seemingly simple request: a digital family illustration of 4 people: herself, her husband, her son, and the bride. References were provided, payment completed, and everything appeared routine. Trusting her experience and professionalism, the artist began working on the piece. After several days, she sent the first draft. Almost immediately, the mother-in-law responded. Yet all the comments were focused on the bride in the illustration. Her smile is too big. Remove the blush. Make the eyeliner thinner. At first, the artist assumed the client wanted subtle adjustments, perhaps reflecting the bride's real-life preferences. To ensure accuracy, she requested additional photos of the bride. The photos confirmed what the artist had already captured. The smile, the features, and the details were accurate. Yet the mother-in-law persisted. Her smile isn't natural, she insisted. Make it polite, not glamorous. With each change, the illustration began to drift further from reality. The bride's features, her expression, the personality in the portrait, all were being altered to fit someone else's version of her. A creeping unease settled in. This was no longer just a creative project. It was becoming something else entirely. Once the first round of adjustments was complete, the artist sent the revised illustration. She expected the client to be satisfied, or at least reasonable. But the response was immediate, focused again entirely on the bride. The hairstyle is wrong. She complained on her wedding day. Change it, the mother-in-law wrote, sending a new reference photo. The artist complied, carefully redrawing the hair to match the new instructions. But the request didn't stop there. Remove the floral patterns on her dress. Make it plain, the client demanded. Each instruction erased another piece of the bride's identity, removing details that had once reflected her personality, her elegance, her day. By the third draft, the bride in the illustration looked less like herself and more like a generic figure. Still, the mother-in-law pressed further. Make her chubbier. She isn't that thin in real life, she insisted. It was at that moment the artist realized this wasn't about subtle adjustments. This was about control, about altering the bride's appearance to satisfy someone else's personal judgment. The artist paused. She had spent hours perfecting each draft, maintaining accuracy and respect for the bride's likeness. But she could not comply with a request meant to humiliate or distort someone. Calmly, she responded, "I'm unable to make this change. Please show the illustration to your daughter-in-law. If she wants adjustments, I will gladly make them." The mother-in-law's reaction was swift and angry. She demanded a refund, claiming the artist had ruined her Christmas gift. Yet the artist had already delivered the work according to the instructions she had agreed to, and she had remained professional throughout. She sent the original first draft to the bride, closing the order, and stood firm. In that moment, the artist realized that boundaries in her work were just as important as the details in her illustrations. Protecting the client, the bride, meant refusing to participate in harm, even if it upset the person paying for the service. And in that stand, she preserved not only the integrity of her art, but also the dignity of the person it was meant to honor. The illustrator took a moment to pause and respond. She politely refused the request. "I'm sorry, I cannot make the bride look ugly on purpose. Please show the illustration to your daughter-in-law, and if she wants adjustments, I'll gladly make them." The mother-in-law reacted angrily. She demanded a full refund, claiming the illustrator had ruined her perfect Christmas surprise. But the illustrator stood firm, confident in her work and in the ethics of her profession. She sent the original draft to the bride and closed the order, preserving the integrity of the artwork and protecting the bride's identity. Friends and family supported her, agreeing that the client's requests were malicious. And here's where the lesson begins. This isn't just a story about art or a Christmas gift. It's about boundaries, self-respect, and standing up against manipulation. Lessons that every parent, teenager, or young adult should understand. When someone tries to control your image, your choices, or your child, it's not about being difficult. It's about recognizing red flags and protecting your emotional safety. On Wise Parenthood, we take real-life stories, dissect the behavior behind them, and give practical guidance. If you've ever felt pressure to change who you are, whether as a parent, a teen, or a professional, share your experience. Your story could help someone else navigate a toxic situation. In this story, the mother-in-law's behavior wasn't random. It followed a clear pattern. Every change she requested, the bride's smile, makeup, hairstyle, dress, even body shape, was a way to assert control and influence. But why? What drove her to behave this way? 1. Insecurity and jealousy. Some mothers-in-law feel threatened when their son forms a close emotional bond with his wife. The bride represents a new center of attention for the son, and subconsciously, the mother-in-law fears being replaced in her son's heart. This insecurity often drives her to scrutinize and correct the bride, not because the bride is at fault, but because the mother-in-law wants to maintain her own position and influence in the family. 2. Need for control. By altering the bride's appearance, hairstyle, or even body image, the mother-in-law establishes a subtle dominance. Requests like make her smile smaller or change her hairstyle are not about helping. They're about sending a message. I decide how things should be. This creates an environment where the bride feels she must comply to be accepted, undermining her confidence and autonomy. 3. Rigid expectations. Some in-laws hold a fixed idea of how a daughter-in-law should behave or look, based on tradition, personal preferences, or comparisons. When the bride does not naturally fit this mold, the mother-in-law attempts to reshape her to meet these standards. Instead of guidance, this rigid expectation becomes pressure, stripping away the bride's individuality and self-expression. 4. Control and projection. Many mothers-in-law not only try to control the bride, but also manipulate how others perceive her. By critiquing her appearance or actions, they project their own insecurities and ideals onto her. This is often less about the bride and more about protecting the mother-in-law's own reputation, status, or authority within the family and social circle. 5. Emotional manipulation. Requests to change the bride's smile, blush, or dress creates self-doubt, insecurity, and dependence on the mother-in-law's approval. Over time, the bride may start questioning her own choices, losing confidence, and feeling constantly judged. If the son observes this dynamic, he may feel caught between his mother and his wife, leading to emotional strain, divided loyalties, and weakened trust. Potential consequences if the son or bride realizes. If the bride or her husband, the son, becomes aware of this manipulative behavior, the fallout could be severe. The bride might feel humiliated, betrayed, or unwelcome in her own family. She could start questioning her place in the household, doubting her husband's loyalty, or even feel emotionally unsafe. The son could feel torn between defending his wife and maintaining peace with his mother, leading to guilt, resentment, and emotional strain. Trust between all parties could break down, and the family environment could become tense, cold, and conflict-driven. Potential consequences if left unchecked. For the bride, lowered self-esteem, constant fear of judgment, feeling unwelcome, and emotional stress. For the son, emotional conflict, guilt, and pressure to choose sides, harming his relationship with both his mother and his wife. For the household, tension, arguments, and an unhealthy environment where every interaction carries stress and conflict. The family dynamic can become unbalanced, leading to long-term resentment and emotional distance. In short, the lesson is clear. A daughter-in-law should be welcomed, supported, and respected. Controlling behavior, even disguised as concern or a gift, only damages relationships and trust. Parents and in-laws, remember, your role is to guide, support, and embrace your new family members, not to change them. Respect, patience, and understanding are the gifts that truly last a lifetime.